AITA for refusing to pay my friend $60 that I owe him. He paid for me at a group dinner when I forgot my wallet at home. For as long as I can remember, my best friend Jake and I have been inseparable. We met in high school, bonded over a shared love for video games, late-night fast food runs, and an unspoken understanding that no matter what, we had each other's backs. Over the years, our friendship only deepened, surviving moves, breakups, job changes, and all the other chaotic shifts life throws at you in your 20s. I always considered myself a generous person, especially when it came to Jake. It was never really a conscious decision, I just never minded helping him out when he needed it. Money, for me, has always been something I see as fluid. I work, I earn, I spend. If a friend needs something, and I can afford to help, I do. And Jake? Well, Jake needed help pretty often. It started small. A few bucks here and there for gas when we were teenagers, the occasional $5 bill for snacks at the convenience store. No big deal. But as we got older, the amount started growing. There was the time he needed $50 because he was short on rent after spending too much on a night out. Another time, he asked for $100 to cover his share of a trip we took with our friend group. He always promised to pay me back, and sometimes he did, bits and pieces, when he could. But more often than not, I would just shrug it off. The biggest loan I ever gave him was $300. And what was the emergency, you might ask? A PlayStation 5. He framed it as an opportunity he couldn't pass up, said it was the last one in stock, and practically begged me to spot him the cash. At the time, I laughed about it, rolled my eyes, and sent him the money. He swore up and down that he would pay me back soon. That was over 2 years ago. I never hounded him for it. That just was not my style. I figured if he could pay, he would. And if not, well, I wasn't going to lose sleep over it. Sometimes, instead of paying me back in cash, he would send me gifts in video games we played together. Skins, battle passes, in-game currency, stuff I never asked for, but I accepted because I did not want to make a big deal out of it. Fast forward to a few weeks ago. We were out with some friends at a restaurant, and I had stupidly left my wallet at home. When the bill came, I told Jake I would send him the $60 as soon as I got home. He covered me without hesitation, and the night went on like normal. But life got busy. I forgot. A few days later, I got a text from him, "Can you send me that $60 from dinner?" I immediately felt bad. I had genuinely forgotten, so I replied right away, "Sorry, man. I'll send it tonight." I thought that would be the end of it, but he responded almost instantly with something that stopped me in my tracks. "I shouldn't have to chase you for this, man." For a moment, I just stared at my screen. That one sentence, so casually dropped in there, hit a nerve I did not even realize I had. I felt my chest tighten, my fingers twitch. It was such a simple statement, but it made my stomach turn. I shouldn't have to chase you for this. I thought about every time I had lent him money and never asked for it back. Every time I had spotted him, every time I had been the one to bail him out without ever sending a text, much less making him feel guilty. And now, over $60 measly, he had the audacity to make me feel like some deadbeat who was dodging a debt. Something inside me snapped. I was not about to let this slide. I took a deep breath before typing, "Look, I get that I owe you $60, and I'll pay you back, but let's not pretend this is some one-sided thing. You still owe me hundreds, and I've never hounded you about it." I sent the message and waited. And then, as I expected, Jake did not take it well. His response came fast, defensive, and dripping with indignation. "That's not the same thing," he shot back. "You never asked for your money back, so that's on you. If you didn't care enough to get it, that's not my problem." I felt my jaw clench as I read those words. It was not my problem. Was he serious? It was like all those years of silent generosity had just been thrown back in my face. I had assumed that, at the very least, he recognized what I had done for him. That even if I never asked for my money back, he understood the kind of friend I had been. But this? This made it clear that he saw it differently. To him, my kindness was just a nonverbal agreement that I never expected to be repaid. And yet, here he was, demanding his $60 as if the entire dynamic of our friendship had been built on a strict balance sheet. I wanted to say more. I wanted to lay it all out, the gas money, the trip, the PlayStation, the years of small loans adding up. I wanted to throw it all in his face the way he was doing to me. But I stopped myself. Instead, I just sent him the $60 and left it at that. No follow-up message. No passive-aggressive remark. Just a transaction. AITA. Update 1. For a brief moment, after I sent the $60, I thought that would be the end of it. I figured we'd both just let it go, let the tension fade into the background like we had so many times before. We'd had disagreements before, but we never let them linger. I assumed, naively, as it turns out, that this would be no different. I was very wrong. A couple of days later, my phone buzzed with a Venmo notification. When I opened it, my stomach twisted into a knot. A payment request, for $300. No message, no explanation, just a cold, silent demand for the exact amount he still owed me for the PlayStation. At first, I actually laughed. A sharp, incredulous sort of laugh, the kind that bubbles up when something is so absurd it momentarily short-circuits your brain. He had to be joking, right? This had to be some kind of petty, sarcastic jab. But the longer I stared at it, the more I realized he wasn't joking. He was dead serious. I sat there, my phone resting heavy in my palm, my mind racing. Was he actually trying to rewrite history? Was this his way of getting back at me, of leveling the playing field in some twisted way? I had never once asked him to pay me back. Not once. I had never kept a running tally of the money I had given him, never turned our friendship into some kind of transaction. I had let it all go. But now, because I had taken a few days to send him $60, he was acting like I had secretly been keeping score all along, just waiting for the perfect moment to hit him with an invoice. The sheer audacity of it made my blood boil. I shot him a text, short and to the point, "Dude, what is this?" His reply came instantly, like he had been waiting for me to react. "You clearly care about money now, so I figured I'd settle my debts too." It was such an infuriatingly smug response that I felt my vision blur with anger. He was gaslighting me, trying to flip the script and make it seem like I was the one who had turned our friendship into a financial transaction. Like I was the one keeping track, when the reality was that he had set this whole thing in motion with his own hypocrisy. I declined the request. And then, a few hours later, I got another notification. He had sent it again. That was the moment I saw red. My chest tightened, my pulse pounded in my ears. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about respect. About principle. About the fact that for years, I had given and given and given without ever expecting anything in return, and now, the one time he was made to feel even the slightest bit of accountability, he couldn't handle it. He couldn't accept even the smallest taste of his own medicine. I texted him again, my fingers moving fast across the screen. "Dude. I let that debt go a long time ago. You were the one who made a big deal about $60, not me. Let's just call it even and move on." His response was immediate. "Nah, man. That's not how this works. You made it about money first." And that was it. That was the last straw. I blocked him. 15 years of friendship, gone. Not over $60. Not over $300. But over something deeper, something uglier. The realization that the person I had always considered my closest friend didn't see me the way I had seen him. That every time I had lent him money, he hadn't thought of it as kindness, as generosity. He had seen it as a weakness to exploit. And when that dynamic was challenged, when, for the first time, he was made to feel accountable, he couldn't handle it. Instead of owning up to it, instead of showing even an ounce of gratitude or self-awareness, he doubled down, lashed out, and tried to make me feel like the villain. And honestly, the moment I hit that block button, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Update 2. A week passed. No texts, no calls, no more Venmo requests. The silence was almost disorienting at first, like stepping out into an empty street after years of navigating a city packed with noise. There was no lingering expectation, no background stress of whether I'd be getting another casual request for money or some offhand comment about how I owed him one. For the first time in years, it was just quiet. I told myself that this was the natural conclusion. Friendships fade, especially when they become as one-sided as ours had. People grow apart, and while it was a bit messier than I would have liked, it was over. Jake was out of my life. I wasn't going to reach out, and honestly, I didn't expect him to either. He had too much pride for that, too much of a need to always be the one in control. If he had reached out, it wouldn't have been to mend things, it would have been to twist the knife, to find a way to reframe the situation where he came out looking better. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I had spent so long excusing his behavior, telling myself that it was just how he was, that it was easier to let things slide than to confront them. Now, without him in my life, I could see how exhausting it had been. The constant juggling act of keeping the peace, of balancing his needs with my own, of never wanting to be the bad guy even when I was being taken advantage of. All of that was gone now. But peace was never something Jake handled well. The notification came in late one evening. A DM from Mark, one of our mutual friends. It wasn't unusual for him to message me. We'd chat every now and then, nothing too deep, just casual conversations about whatever game we were playing or plans for the next weekend. But this message wasn't casual. There was a weight to it before I even opened it, an unspoken tension in just the way it sat on my screen. He was checking in, asking if I was alright. That alone was enough to put me on edge. Then came the real reason for his message. Jake had been talking. A lot. Apparently, Jake had been going around to our entire friend group, painting me as the villain in a story I didn't even know he was telling. According to him, I was a cheapskate who kept meticulous tabs on every dollar I ever spent, someone who used money as leverage to control him. I had, in his words, weaponized generosity, making him feel like he was forever in my debt. The sheer irony of it made my blood boil. He had erased years of borrowing, years of me covering for him without hesitation, years of me letting things slide just to keep the friendship intact. In his version of events, none of that had ever happened. Instead, he had spun a narrative where I was the one nickel-and-diming our friendship, where I was the one who had been unfair, calculating, transactional. The more I read, the more surreal it became. It wasn't just that he was lying, it was that he genuinely seemed to believe it. He had taken bits and pieces of truth, distorted them, and built an entirely new reality where he was the victim. And then Mark dropped the real bombshell. Jake had gone beyond just talking. He had put it all in writing. At first, I thought it was a joke. A Google Doc. Who does that? Who sits down, opens a blank document, and starts compiling grievances like they're preparing for a court case? It was so absurd that I almost laughed. Almost. Mark sent me the link. I hesitated before opening it, unsure of what exactly I was about to see. But curiosity won out. I clicked. It was worse than I imagined. Jake had gone full accountant mode. The document was an itemized list of every single time he had ever spent money on me. Every single time. It was all there, stretching back years. The burger he bought me in high school. $4.79. The movie ticket he covered in 2015. $11.50. The time I crashed at his place after a brutal breakup and he ordered pizza for us. $18.25. Even the most minor, insignificant expenses had been tracked. A gas station coffee from 2017. A $2 Venmo he had sent me for parking once. A $3 ATM fee he had covered when I didn't have cash. It was staggering in its pettiness. At first, I laughed. The sheer effort he had put into this was almost impressive. He had dug through years of transactions, old messages, probably even his bank statements, just to create this absurd financial ledger of perceived debts. It was insanity. But then I scrolled to the bottom, and my amusement vanished. At the very end, bolded, underlined, and in all caps, it read. Total amount owed by $1,423.65. And the worst part? He had sent it to our entire friend group. Update 3. At this point, I knew there was no coming back from this. A 15-year friendship, reduced to a petty spreadsheet. Not a conversation, not an argument fueled by years of frustration, not even an emotional falling out, just a cold, calculated ledger of perceived debts, each transaction meticulously catalogued as if we were nothing more than business associates settling accounts. In Jake's mind, this list wasn't just an attempt to justify his own hypocrisy, it was his final act of control. A document meant to cement the idea that I was the one who had done him wrong, that I was the one who had turned our friendship into a financial dispute. It was a blatant rewriting of history, erasing all the times he had leaned on me, all the times I had quietly covered for him, all the times I had let things slide for the sake of keeping the peace. To put it in writing, to distribute it like some kind of public indictment, to demand validation from our friends like a defendant pleading his case, it was something else entirely. The absurdity of it was still settling in, creeping up my spine, twisting my stomach into knots. This wasn't frustration anymore. This was something colder, something that sat heavy in my chest. A realization. The final, undeniable proof that this friendship had never been what I thought it was. The notifications started rolling in almost immediately. My phone vibrated in bursts, one after another, messages flooding the group chat in rapid succession. Some people were laughing, unable to comprehend the level of pettiness they were witnessing. Others were outright calling him out, bluntly asking what the hell he was trying to accomplish. A few were quieter, hesitant, maybe unsure of where they stood. I didn't blame them. It was a weird, uncomfortable situation. No one expects to wake up to a financial report on their friendships, much less one dripping with this kind of desperation. Then, amidst the noise, one message stood out. It wasn't from me. It was from Lisa. Lisa had never been the type to get caught up in drama, but she also wasn't the type to let bullshit slide. She wasn't the loudest in the group, but when she spoke, people listened. And in this case, she didn't just speak, she dropped a nuclear bomb. Without hesitation, she fired back at Jake's ridiculous document with something of her own. A Google Sheet. And its title? Jake's Greatest Hits, a record of every dollar he's taken from others. The second I saw the link, I froze. My heart pounded, my fingers hovering over the screen for just a second longer than necessary before I finally clicked. I didn't know what to expect, but the second the page loaded, I felt the full weight of what she had done hit me like a tidal wave. Lisa had receipts. And not just vague recollections, not just accusations, proof. Screenshots of texts spanning years. Conversations where Jake had casually asked to borrow money, full of the same tired excuses, the same empty promises to pay people back that had never materialized. Venmo requests that had been ignored, cash apps that had been left pending indefinitely, transactions that had been quietly swept under the rug. And it wasn't just me. Jake had mooched off of everyone. One by one, the stories poured in like a dam had finally broken. The people who had stayed silent, who had been hesitant to take sides, suddenly had something to say. The rent Jake had come up short on. Someone had covered that. The bar tabs he had forgotten to pay. Someone else had taken care of them. The video games, the food, the concert tickets, every single time he had conveniently managed to dodge responsibility, someone else had stepped up. And every single time, it had been brushed off, ignored, never spoken of again. Lisa's spreadsheet didn't just list the amounts, she had actual proof. Texts, PayPal transactions, screenshots of Jake using the same excuses over and over again. I'll hit you back soon. I got you next paycheck. I just need a little more time. It was a pattern, clear as day. A routine. A habit so ingrained in him that he probably didn't even register what he was doing anymore. At the very bottom, in bold red text, sat the final total. $5,217.34. The group chat imploded. It was like watching a controlled burn suddenly turn into an uncontrollable wildfire. People who had been quiet up until this point were now piling on, their frustration boiling over. Some were pissed off, some were just done. A few tried to make light of the situation, cracking jokes at Jake's expense, but underneath it all, there was a real sense of betrayal. It was one thing to borrow money. It was another thing to systematically take advantage of your friends, to manipulate them into covering for you time and time again, all while maintaining the audacity to act like the victim when someone finally pushed back. Jake had spent years playing this game. Years acting like he was just a little down on his luck, like he just needed help one last time. He had made himself into a burden so casually, so effortlessly, that it had taken this long for people to realize just how deep it went. And now, with the evidence laid bare, there was nowhere left for him to hide. The backlash was instant. People weren't just mad, they were furious. The hypocrisy of it all was too much to ignore. The same guy who had taken the time to create a document trying to paint me as a financial leech had been bleeding our entire friend group dry for years. And now, when confronted with the reality of his own actions, he had no defense. No excuse. No witty comeback. He didn't even try to fight back. Within minutes, Jake left the group chat. No response. No attempt to defend himself. No damage control. Just a quick exit, like a thief slinking away into the night. And that was it. No dramatic farewell. No parting shot. No attempt at redemption. Just gone. For a long moment, I just sat there, watching as the group chat continued to explode, as people ranted about the years of bullshit they had put up with, as they processed the realization that Jake had never been the friend they thought he was. I should have been angry. I should have wanted my money back. I should have felt something. But instead, all I felt was an overwhelming sense of relief. Update 4. Then, just when I thought it was done, Jake found a way to outdo himself. A notification popped up. Lisa had posted a screenshot. The second I saw it, I knew it was going to be good. Jake had sent her $100. No message. No explanation. Just a transaction. But that wasn't all. A few minutes later, he sent another message, long, rambling, dripping with condescension. He wasn't apologizing, he wasn't admitting fault, and he sure as hell wasn't trying to make things right. Instead, he had doubled down. According to him, we were all ungrateful for everything he had done for us. He acted as if our friendship had been some kind of charity operation, as if he had been carrying the entire group on his back, single-handedly funding our fun while we all just leeched off of him. He painted himself as the misunderstood, underappreciated benefactor, someone who had been nothing but generous and had received nothing but betrayal in return. And then came the kicker. He asked Lisa why she hadn't divided the $100 between everyone if we all thought he owed us something. That was it. That was the moment the floodgates burst open. The group chat erupted. Laughter. So much laughter. The sheer absurdity of it, after being called out for over $5,000 in debts, after being exposed for running the same tired scam on everyone he knew, after leaving the group chat like a coward when he realized he had no way to spin this in his favor, this was his grand response. To send a fraction of what he owed, act like he was doing us a favor, and then passive-aggressively demand that we split it like some kind of parting gift. People lost it. Lisa, of course, was the first to respond, screenshotting his message and dropping it in the chat like a trophy. The reactions poured in immediately. Some people were in full hysterics, others were roasting him mercilessly, breaking down just how ridiculous his logic was. Someone even joked that we should each take $2 from the $100 and call it even, just to see if he would lose his mind over it. It was clear that at this point, no one was taking him seriously. He had officially become a punchline. And I realized something. For years, Jake had operated on a very specific, very calculated form of manipulation. He relied on people's good nature, on the social contract that says friends don't nitpick debts, that real friendships aren't transactional. He had played the long game, borrowing small amounts from different people, never enough at once to make it feel worth chasing down, never enough to push anyone into calling him out directly. And when he did get called out, he flipped the script, he made himself the victim, made the other person feel guilty for even bringing it up. It had worked for years. But now, the illusion was shattered. No one was falling for it anymore. No one was second-guessing themselves, wondering if they had been too harsh or if maybe they should have let it go. Jake had lost the one thing that made his entire scam work, plausible deniability. Before this, he had always been able to shrug things off, to gaslight people into thinking they were making a big deal out of nothing. Now, with the spreadsheet, with the receipts, with the full weight of everyone's experiences laid out in black and white, he had nowhere left to hide. And his $100 stunt? This wasn't a man trying to fix things. This wasn't even a man trying to defend himself. This was a tantrum. A last, desperate attempt to claw back some control, to regain the upper hand in a fight he had already lost. But all it did was prove what we had all just realized: Jake wasn't some misunderstood victim of a financial dispute gone wrong. He was a joke. And the second people start laughing at you instead of arguing with you, it's over. Lisa didn't respond to him directly. None of us did. What was the point? He had already removed himself from the group chat, already severed whatever thin, fraying thread still connected him to us. There was nothing left to say. Instead, she did something even better. She donated the $100 to a charity. And then screenshot the receipt and posted it. If the group chat had been laughing before, it was absolute chaos now. People were wheezing, posting gifs, making jokes about how Jake had finally paid back a debt for the first time in his life, just not to any of us. Someone even suggested making the Jake Fund, where we would all chip in and donate in his name every time he pulled a stunt like this. It was brutal. And just like that, it was done. Jake had tried to play his usual game, but for the first time in his life, it hadn't worked. He had thought he could rewrite history, could shift the blame, could play the victim just like he always had. Instead, he had exposed himself in the worst possible way. He wasn't wronged. He wasn't owed anything. He was a fraud. And now, everyone knew it.